Hey everybody, it's Derek Martin from CodeOpinion.com. And what if I said there were no more custom integrations? No need to bridge two different APIs, just one universal protocol to connect things together. And in the world of LLMs, that's MCP, Model Context Protocol. The way I've been hearing it being described is kind of the USB of AI. And while I was at Microsoft Build, I got to chat with James Montemagno and Delimarsky about MCP, Model Context Protocol, and kind of where we think it's going, how you can really be using it as a way to orchestrate different tasks. Now for me personally, you'll know that I don't say this much, but I'm super pumped about MCP. From the design architecture point of view, I don't know if I really felt about something like this in a really long time. And you can see the conversation we have, you can kind of start seeing and open up your mind to the possibilities, and you really let your mind run wild on where this may go. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I did. MCP, obviously the buzz here that we were talking about. Before we even get into it, and I want to talk about some design, more about how people may be thinking about what they're building now and how that contrasts a little bit. So you'll see where I'm going with this. But can we just lay the land on what MCP is for those unfamiliar?
Yeah, do we want to I'll just say the Anthropic quote, right? So when you go to the Anthropic Model Context Protocol, and then I'll say the James version of it, and then Den can say the Den version of it. So you can think of it like this. It's like we need a universal standard to provide context in a way for models and LLMs to perform actions on our behalf. We need a way for it to invoke these tools. And you can think of it as a universal adapter for LLMs and models. Just like USB-C is a universal adapter, you plug it in, you can plug a bunch of other stuff, HDMI cables, other things like this. So Model Context Protocol is just that. It's a universal adapter. It's a standardization that Anthropic created that others have adopted, like Microsoft and others throughout the company, and a lot of big announcements here at Build for doing that. And so it standardizes that thing just kind of like the USB-C adapters have done. My thing is actually, like I saw this from Julia, who is on the API Center team, and she's like, it's in the name, actually. It's it's MCP, right? So it's a protocol to provide context to models. It's actually in the name, just reversed, actually.
Yeah.
So you think of it like this, is models are really small. They can do a bunch of stuff, and they call these tools, basically, to do actions on our behalf. So like GitHub Copilot can call, it can read your code, it can do different stuff. But it can't do other things unless we provide actions or ways of doing it. So in the traditional sense, if you were in VS Code or in Visual Studio or you're in some other IDE or Claude Desktop, you would write plugins, basically, that would like extend GitHub Copilot's custom things. MCP standardized a way of doing that, so you can use the same tool in all, basically set of tools in all of these other clients that are out there, like GitHub Copilot, to do things like go off and read different things from GitHub into the Windows subsystem, Windows file system, into like a maybe Postgres database. Basically, it knows how to, it standardizes the way of the model and the tools to call other tools, right? That's kind of like what it does, but it's a protocol to provide context to models. That's what it does.
I love that.
Yeah.
No, that basically covers it. And what's interesting, too, is that a lot of folks have this misconception that, oh, MCP is this new way for me to build APIs. And the reality is like, no, you can kind of still have your existing APIs. And we know that. A lot of enterprises have them, a lot of startups, a lot of SaaS businesses, they have their APIs. And MCP allows you to essentially have a universal layer, like I said, to expose that API and expose that data to LLMs in a standard way that avoids the hassle of, oh, you have this special API with a special authorization mechanism. Somebody needs to build that adapter. No, it's just use MCP.
Yeah, and a great thing, we were doing a live coding thing. Pierce was doing one earlier on the VS Code channel. He wanted to use Perplexity AI to do this deep research. He's planning this feature for his cycling application that he's building. So if he wanted to use Perplexity AI today to do that, he may go to the Perplexity AI website, type in this big prompt, get the output, bring it back into VS Code, shove that into Copilot, have it rev on it, go back, right? And the idea is, how do we let Copilot, Claude Desktop, other LLM clients in different, not just code editors, but other desktop applications or even Windows, call directly into Perplexity AI without having Perplexity AI create 18 different plugins, basically, right? It's a universal standard there.
Yeah, so what you guys were just touching on, like in terms of APIs, that's actually where kind of I'm directing a little bit of this.
Awesome.
Is
So in the context of, say, like my world, probably most of my viewers, they're in different domains. They're building stuff like they might be in like healthcare, building an EMR, whatever. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. If they have their existing APIs, a lot of them, this is just based on comments and how I know things go out there, are building, I would say more so, a lot of it's CRUD driven, right? And when you see examples, and when you're using an LLM, and if you are, say, an end user, say you are, I don't know, for example, like I'm in transportation space and we're talking about like somebody that's dispatching a shipment, they're using very specific language, right? So do you see how, do you think this is a way where developers might need to get out of technical jargon for exposing their tools that then are like, so it understands, okay, this is actually what this is supposed to do. I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah.
It's, because I harp on this a lot. It's, in my world, it's not like you are, you get an Amazon package and the delivery driver gets to your house and takes the picture of it. That's actually a part of workflow. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm updating the delivery date on a record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's more I'm doing a delivery event, and it's kind of a part of workflow. So that's what I'm really curious of. Like, does this end up starting going where you're more expressing what your end users and how they think about it versus typically, so because that's in your UI is how you would be building that, but behind the scenes, you'd be more. Oftentimes, people are a little bit more CRUD driven.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this?
Well, I think, yes, a lot of times like you're developing the API because you're also developing the UI like at your company.
Yeah.
In this instance, the whole idea is exposing, they're not only APIs. You can have MCP servers that do number crunching and data crunching and call in and connect to databases and things. They're not always like just a straight API or not just exposing your REST. You can do that, and that's a thing that can happen, which many MCPs are. But a good example is like, like I'm building an iOS app. So I would like to expose all of the Xcode CLI tools so anyone can call it, not just Xcode, right? So I can call it from VS Code or somewhere else, right? So in this instance, the idea might be, how do we annotate these MCP function calls or tools as we call them, like this MCP for this driver, courier X, might be creating a bunch of MCP servers and tools, and they would annotate all of them, right? So they would say like, get all deliveries, get delivery for a driver, and the thing with you have these annotations, and the LLMs and the clients like GitHub Copilot or Cloud Desktop, they can see these annotations, this natural language, and what models and LLMs are really good at is natural language. Like they're super good. So if you're like, hey, go get me all of my deliveries for the day, and then can you create a route for me, and then do this thing, blah, blah. So it's going to say, okay, like I know that you want me to get routes, and I see that there's a tool available from Courier X that says get all deliveries today for this. Or it might even be like, get deliveries, and then it may take in parameters like driver name, date, location or whatever, car number or whatever, right? And it would then pass that information to the tool in this MCP server that's running somewhere, maybe on device or maybe in the cloud. And then it will go return that data. And that data is going to be structured in some way that then the model will then interpret those results and then be able to display something. And the cool part is that once it has the data, it can kind of do anything. So I created like a monkey MCP server because I love monkeys all over the world. And I was like, let me just build something very simple that people can understand. It's like I can get some monkeys, and I can get a specific monkey, and I get information. I could even add monkeys. I could do stuff like CRUD, right? I could delete monkeys. I do this stuff. And the whole idea was simple. It's like, give me a list of monkeys. And it returns a bunch of JSON, just blob data. And then at that point, the LLM can do whatever you want, right? I could have it put it in a table. I could have it go get details for a monkey. I could have it generate code for me, right? I could have it generate a website for me, right? I could have it find the closest monkey to me because it has latitude and longitude. I could give it this information. So we're just providing that more context. But the models and the tools and the clients are really good. I'm not sure if I answered any of the question, but Dan, why did
No, that's good. I think it's interesting that I love the framing, and mainly because it basically it gives you a lot of freedom on the level of abstraction, right? Like we're used as developers a lot of times to think of this very kind of API /driver/create record, And for a lot of the MCP servers, that becomes a high level of abstraction where it's exactly as you described. It's like create a new route, right? Like go ahead and mark packages delivered. Like you don't necessarily care about the super structured API layout, which, and again, by standard of the MCP, it's up to you as the API developer and the MCP server developer to decide the level of detail and abstraction that you want to expose in your MCP server. So if you want to map one-to-one to your API surface, you absolutely can. And as James has described, like you would essentially lay it out, give it some descriptive, names, give it some good descriptions that the LLM can understand, and there you go. Your API is mapped to an MCP server. But the superpower here is that you can start combining these scenarios very easily where somebody that uses your MCP server for your API doesn't actually need to know how your API operates. Like they don't need to know that, if you want to mark a package as delivered, you also need to call that the driver was at this location at this time. You just say like mark packages delivered for this driver, and then the MCP server, with the help of the LLM, is going to take that action and combine the right API calls and make sure that it all just happens.
Yeah, exactly. So like in my instance of the monkey server, which seems silly, but what Den just said is perfect because I have a tool that's exposed that's like get monkey details. You don't need to know what endpoint I'm hitting. You don't need to know what parameters I'm going to do. The LLM will figure it out, right? And my tool exposes it, and it knows how to map everything back based on the parameters that are set in, which is really, really fascinating in that regard. And you can kind of combine these things together because tools can call tools, right? You could have one that is an amazing route navigator, right? That is doing routes, so you can get route map it, and it's just calling tools and it's pulling it all together. It gives you a summary of it, which is really neat.
That's the superpower, right? Because like normally if you use just an API, you need to know like which API do I call? What is the sequence? What is I need to wait for the return here. And not only that, but you can combine it with other MCP servers.
Yep.
So if you have several different MCP servers connected to your LLM, one can get a tool from some API surface, then get a resource. Like there's a number of primitives that you can leverage across many servers, and that chaining and then putting them together, like think of like how much time you would spend to just connect all these different APIs together if you were just an engineer and you have to like lay it all out, build a whole new API surface. This just does it for you.
And there's three parts to MCPs to think about in general too for people listening. Is there's the actual servers. So those are the things that are implementing, exposing those tools that talk over different protocols that can run on device or run in the cloud. But then there's also like the client. So these are the things that are connecting to it, right? So that could be like an app that you're creating. That could be, for example, GitHub Copilot lives inside of a host that we call it. So VS Code is the host. GitHub Copilot is the client, and GitHub Copilot is connecting directly to these servers. In the case of Windows, like Windows now is not only a host, it's a client, and it's a server. It has a bunch of servers, actually, that's exposing. So that's kind of very fascinating. So you could be an app developer, and you could say, hey, I not only just want to create MCP servers that maybe my company or the users are using, but maybe I want to also create a client because I'm developing applications internally. I want to connect to different MCP servers that I'm creating, but also other people are creating too. Or you might, for example, just say, I am Courier X, and I know that people are using Claude Desktop and now Windows and using other things. And wouldn't it be awesome if they could just literally say, hey, this is my tracking number. Go give me all the detailed information. And you just give it a bunch of data, and then the LLM figures out how to do it, right, in the UI that's out there. And then once the people have that data in their tool, if you put it in Claude Desktop or Windows or whatever it is, like you can then do anything with it. Once you have the data, you can just do anything with it, which is cool. I could just be like, oh, put this up there. And then I could then say, okay, what I want to do is like whenever I boot up whatever, like, my machine, I want it to, call all these tracking things. I don't need to know anything about Courier X's API or anything like that. Maybe it requires an auth token. Maybe it doesn't. It just gives me back, right? And that's the pure magic of it.
So we kind of mentioned like, okay, we have some existing API. Maybe it's a one-to-one. Maybe it's not. Then you're kind of making like, oh, there could be this composition and stuff. How do you feel like this is going to go? Because I kind of get the sense maybe it's both where it's like, hey, we already have all these APIs. Maybe we have like this an open API spec, Swagger. Like, is it going to be, hey, we really need to find something on top of that that's going to leverage these APIs? Like, what's your sense of how this is going to go?
You have thoughts, Dan? I have thoughts.
I think at the end of the day, I see a lot of future in this particular implementation, especially for something that we probably have heard a lot of build is the agentic workflows.
Yeah.
And as agents take hold of a lot of these different responsibilities that you have in place, you need to have that shared interface, right? In this case, the shared interface could be MCP. Like we also have things like A2A emerging for agent to agent. But the idea is that a lot of these autonomous scenarios will rely on this universal standard for tool calling, for discovering resources, for doing authorization against each other. And you can see scenarios where an MCP server is going to invoke other downstream MCP servers that's going to return more data on those servers, chain to even more servers downstream. So I can totally see a world where now this is not just about your local runtime and you like experimenting with LLMs and saying like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like we showed in Amanda's demo, like the playwright MCP, which is very cool. Like you can do testing, but imagine if it's completely unattended. Like you as a human are not even in the loop because you said, hey, agent, go and figure out how, what are my most optimal delivery routes and who are the drivers operating them. And then it will go through your systems and different agents is going to, run for hours, however long it's going to take to figure it all out. And what's the way to do that? What's the interface? Are you going to chain APIs together?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, I think turning APIs into MCP servers, like that is a possibility, right? Like, Copilot Studio, for example, has a way to import them into it, right? A low-code, no-code solution of saying, hey, I have an open API spectrum. What I really want to do is take my open API and like give it to Copilot Studio and like generate it, right? And I know there's a lot of talk about like actually like different programming languages because you can build MCP servers and clients in a bunch of different programming languages, including C#. But like annotating, right? Like, I already have open API spec, like point out a spec and do stuff. I think that is like fine, right? But even like Den said, do you want to expose all of it? Do you want to expose some of it? Are you annotating the description that's more human versus spec, right? Like when I write an MCP description, like I write it in a way that's not just like get monkeys or whatever. It's like get a list of monkeys that have like some stuff. Like it's a little bit more descriptive so that I'm helping the model a little bit more. And I think like, yeah, you can do that. You can import it. And like that's a good first step. But the power is that your MCP server can do more. Like it can like do its own crunching. Like your like a model, let's say like 4.1 could call into this tool, and your tool that you have in your MCP server could call 4.1 and do something else, right? It could say, oh, I have all these inputs, but I have a custom system set up to not just like take the parameters, but now I'm going to like run this and I'm going to call a custom model. I'm going to do some other number crunching, and then I'm going to return a result back to you, right? So that's almost like the agent-to-agent kind of mode calling, but it can do stuff. It can parse inputs. It could be output. It could be do a bunch of different stuff, right? That could be really custom there. I saw this awesome demo at VS Live from the SQL Server team, and it was like imagine you're in a car insurance company, right? And you're like, okay, I have a user database, I have claim forms, I have billing, I have my service account, I have all the chat logs. And their whole thing is like right now, imagine you're someone, I got to go run all these different tools or know all these APIs and all this stuff. No, what you want to do is you want to go to a console, or you want to go to an application, and what you're going to say is like, find me all of Den's history and generate a report, right? And then it's going to go off and call these servers and like these agents that are running, and it's going to go call these things, and they're going to be reasoning, they're going to be doing stuff, and they're going to return you information back and then let you iterate on it, right?
I love it. My favorite example of that, have you guys seen Blender MCP?
No, what is that?
The Blender. So Blender, the 3D editing tool. Yeah. Somebody built an MCP server that basically you use the power of the LLM, but an MCP server that knows how to invoke parts in Blender to go and build like complex 3D models and scenes.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And that's because the model is capable of kind of reasoning over here's what we're trying to do. The tool, go invoke this. Go build this, like, add the sphere. Oh, the sphere needs a shadow. Let's go and do that. Right? And this kind of like the back and forth, and it's just, it feels like a superpower.
There's this Figma MCP server. So Figma, very popular design tool, and you've seen a lot of demos of this being really powerful. It's like, I have this great design, right? And I want to take this design and I want to implement it. Back in the day, 5 months ago. What everybody was doing is like, and you see this a lot in a lot of design tools and a lot of coding tools, is like, we have Figma integration, right? So they wrote some crazy Figma implementation and this huge thing, and they had to read, they had to call all these APIs and to do all this stuff to get into Figma and then to export and to do all this stuff. Now it's like, oh, my tool just talks to the Figma MCP, and I just tell the LLM to give me this code back, and it just does it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like really streamlining that. And what that does is it allows, like, someone solved the problem once. Instead of us all just solving the same problem of integrating with Figma over and over again, we now interface with one thing, and then now we get to actually move on to more problems.
It's a higher level abstraction.
Higher level abstraction.
It gives you, like, we wrote assembly code before, right? And now we don't. Well, I mean, I'm sure people still do for like drivers, but the vast majority of people don't need to know assembly.
Yeah.
Same with MCP, right? Like before, you'd need to chain different APIs. Like now, I can just plug in this MCP server, and it does it for me.
We're giving you the answers at all.
Yeah, no. All I keep thinking of is, if you're typically thinking about, okay, I'm using this. You kind of alluded to it before. It's like, say you're some workflow, and you're okay. I got to call this, and then I'm reading the docs to know that okay, I got to do this first, then I do this. Versus right now, it's really just it's doing that kind of choreography, orchestration for you to know, okay, this is going to happen, calling this tool, doing this, whatever the case may be, rather than a developer statically having to define what that workflow is in a use case.
Yeah.
Right? Like typically now you'd have to find, okay, this is the use case that we support, this is what it is.
Yep.
As opposed to it's doing all the you're making up your use case now.
Yes. Yeah, so I like to show this demo because I think it's really like understandable, because one of the things with MCP servers is, and this A2A stuff, is keeping you in the flow, keeping you in the tool, right? Every time you context switch, you're going to lose productivity, right? Your mind is changing, you want to do this stuff. And that means even from changing from, oh, I'm in Edge to now I'm in a Windows app to now I'm in some other tool. Like every time I open a tool, right? Every time you open a new app on your phone, like now I'm in this UI, I'm in that UI. So how do you stay in the UI and in that conversation? So I show an example of I'm building, let's say everything's a monkey app, but let's say I'm building a monkey app or any application, and you have an idea. What you would normally do 2 months ago was I would say, okay, I'm going to now do some research. I'm going to understand what's my code base. I'm going to go research a bunch of libraries that I might use. Let's say I want to take a photo of a monkey. I want to upload it. I want to do an OCR on it or something like that. What kind of monkey is it, right? I would go do this. And then I would go to GitHub, and I would open an issue, and I would describe this thing. Now what I do is I'm in my tool, whether it be Copilot with VS Code or Visual Studio or Cloud Desktop or some other tool. I say, hey, listen, here's what I want to do. Here's my code. I want you to understand my code base. And so I tell it. It's smart. You just tell it what to do. And I say, this is what I want to do. I want to add a feature where I can take a photo. I want to add an LCR of a monkey, understand my code base. I want you to go search the internet, figure out how would I implement this, what are some options, give me some pros and cons, understand how I would implement it, where I would implement it in this application, and then go create a GitHub issue for me. And it's like, cool, did it. Literally in like a minute, less than a minute, 30 seconds. And then I did this with authentication. I was like, I don't know if I should use Entra ID. Should I use AZOS? Should I use like Okta? Like, what should I use? I don't know. Go figure it out. I'll figure it out, you know? And maybe I call Perplexity AI. Maybe I call some web search. Maybe I just, whatever, I don't know, 4.1, it's new enough. It'll figure it out. And then just go create the issue for me. And I didn't have to leave, no context switching, no anything. And it's just right there for me, right? And now I could say, okay, now this looks really good. Just let go Copilot, go figure out in the background. And maybe Copilot, this is interesting too. The coding agent, which is now in GitHub, I could open an issue, assign it to Copilot, and Copilot could call MCPs and could do stuff. So I could say, oh, there's a Figma in here. It could go do it, right? So that means the GitHub team and the Copilot team didn't need to go figure out how to make a 1,000 bajillion integrations work with this new tool that they developed. They implement one standard and it just works.
There's something to be said on the topic of orchestration and deterministic process.
Yeah.
And I'll just say this because for a lot of the things that we see right now, because the LLMs are not deterministic by their nature, right? Like if you wrote a configuration file for a test before, right? Like you have a JSON config or a YAML config and you just run it and it's consistently doing the same thing. If you have a prompt in an LLM, it can produce different outputs on every run, right? So there's something to be said that there's an opportunity for MCP in the future to maybe also be that foundational building block for adding some of this deterministic behavior where it's like, okay, if I'm calling this MCP server and this MCP server has these specific tools and resources, these primitives, here's how this chain could work. It's not there yet, of course, because, again, it's evolving. It's
new.
Relative. It's new.
Yeah.
All of it is super new. But that need is going to become even more kind of prominent because we know that, like, for example, if I have an MCP server for testing, I want to make sure that my tests are run consistently. I want to make sure that the right tests are created. It's not just, whatever it decides on that run.
Yeah, it's really going to be these agents calling all these different services and all these tools, and ideally, like, everything, you'll configure everything, so you're in control. You understand what you want. But I really envision a world where I wake up in the morning and things have just happened. I think that's the magic. I love when just things happen that I don't want to do manually, like set alarms, check an email, summarize a thing, do a thing, check on this, so I have this. Like, to do the things for me that I don't want to do. Set the coffee, figure out the coffee. I don't know, the coffee machine has an API? I don't know, just figure it out. Like, do it, right?
Yeah.
It should know. It should know. And this is where, like, when I saw MCP server for the first time I saw it done, I was like, it just clicked, I got it. I was like, this makes sense to me. It's a thing. I don't understand very many things in life. But when I saw MCP server, I was like, I get it. But what I see is also the vision down the road, like Den saying whether agents or agents calling MCP server, or even consider an MCP server an agent in itself and someone calling it. It's like, I just want to wake up, but like, shouldn't my alarm clock just be able to like figure out and understand when I'm waking up and like when I like to drink my coffee and like when I'm going to sign in, like when it should know that like my dog needs insulin because she's diabetic, how many units she has. She should know how many it has, and it should automatically order it. Why do I got to call and talk to my vet? I'm wasting their time. It's wasting my time. I should just be able to go, right? And it should just automatically happen. And like, that is going to happen. And it's already happening.
It's happening,
right?
yeah.
It's happening. But the more, to your point, we expose these rich feature sets to these different capabilities and models and clients, more of these actual realities that get rid of that tediousness are going to come to fruition.
Do you get a sense of, I just was thinking of this right now, of like the granularity of tools?
Yeah. There's, I have opinions. And I think
order insulin, done.
Yeah. I think there's some interesting aspects to that, and this is something actually we've been talking to Anthropic about, is this concept of like even like tool authorization, right? So you can have an MCP server that has 1,000 different tools, but depending on who connects to that server, you might want to expose some of them, right? Like if I am authorized on the server, I'm an admin, and I connect to I don't know, like let's pick a random MCP server that does not exist, like some organizational administrator. Like, to what extent do I have access to it? To what tools? Can I delete users? Can I create new users? Versus if I'm logging in as a regular user, I should not be able to do anything. And then be like, oh, nope, sorry, you have no access.
Shouldn't even see them.
Right. So there's like the tool granularity. And I think this is where, as the MCP standard evolves, a lot of these problems come to the forefront, and we know that we need to solve them. We know that things like granularity of tools, what's exposed when, to whom, and can it be revoked, can it be changed, right? Like it's going to be extremely important, right? Like there is just, you can't really make anything serious without it.
Yeah.
You need it.
Like the GitHub MCP server is really great because it allows anyone to connect to GitHub and do everything. But it's like a lot of tools, like 40-something. It's like basically the whole API service and doing stuff. And I maybe use like 5 of them, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of up to me. Do I go and like uncheck all of them? You can tell the models what to do or whatnot. But like, yeah, maybe there would be a way of just saying like, okay, hey, I've given, and this is a good example too, is like, hey, for GitHub, for example, you have to give it a personal access token, like an auth token. It would be smart enough if it was like, hey, your auth token is authorized to make 5 of these 42 calls, right? So I could see that being in the future coming down the road. It's evolving.
It's interesting, too, because when we were talking about, like, okay, maybe that MPC server is also calling something else, and then we're talking about, like, that visibility of does it, like...
We are getting to the world of like agentic identities, and by the way, as you saw in Satya's keynote, we're talking about so it's there's
Entra agent ID.
Entra agent ID, exactly.
Crazy.
It makes sense, and it's super important because you're running into a scenario where you have one MCP server, one agent that has a certain set of permissions, and then you need to call another downstream agent that might or might not need the same permissions, or maybe needs a subset of those permissions. So you need that level of control of going back and forth, and right, like you can't just take in a standard world that we have today. It's like, oh, we have a token, just pass the token. Like you can't do that, because what if the downstream MCP server is not trusted? Like I don't want to give you my credentials to be able to then go do super admin things in the backend server.
And what my immediate thought is of like traditional of, okay, maybe I'm calling some service, and maybe we're not talking about like querying for data or something like that, but it's more action-based where it's doing some state change ultimately somewhere, some side effect, where now it's like, oh, well, I'm calling one thing that maybe has a side effect, and then does it know it can actually call the next thing?
Yeah.
Will it have that permission? And then we're in this weird place where, you know what I mean? Like I have these side effects that I don't want to happen. I would want that whole thing to roll back, not roll back.
Yeah. Right now, I would say that's the next thing to solve. And I think that's something that Den's been working on a lot.
Deterministic nature is what we talked about, right?
Yeah. It is. And I think it's that security protocol. Like right now, how a lot of MCP servers are configured in these tools are from like JSON configurations. And inside there you put and you configure your authorization or things that you want to pass in when you start up. And these MCP servers could be running on your local machine. This could be like an app that runs.
Right.
Docker is often there because that's nice. It gets you that sort of one shield of security-ish. And then you also have remote MCP servers as well that you can just call and invoke, and this could be living in Azure or somewhere else, right? Or in your own server. It's just a protocol that exists that it's reading from and can connect to. But just like you're saying is right now, if you had a server that needed to call other servers and do stuff, you'd basically just be passing in a bunch of tokens into this thing and trusting it that it's going to be okay. That, hey, Den's server that also wants, for some reason, my GitHub token is not going to, now do I have a different token for his? So there's that. So I like, when I log into anything on my phone, my corporate phone with SSO, right? I just log in once, or my Edge browser. I'm just logged into everything Microsoft. What a wonderful world to live in, right? And it just happens. And I feel like eventually we're going to get down this route where just like you log into your Windows machine or your Mac machine or your VS Code or your cloud desktop, you've logged in and you're sort of like linking. It's kind of like Movies Anywhere. I've like linked all of my movie services and let me just watch all my movies anywhere that I want in one place. I could kind of see that as like, hey, we're trusting this host, right? In this case, whether it be Windows, and this is really what it gets to, is the host is the thing that can make the experience great. Whether it's VS Code or Cloud Desktop or Windows itself, it says, hey, I'm logged into GitHub. I'm logged into this thing. And actually, VS Code and Visual Studio do a great job of this. When I'm logged into Visual Studio, I'm logged into my Visual Studio account. I'm logged into my corporate account. I'm logged into GitHub. I'm logged into other things. And it can figure out the federation of the authentication when it needs to. And if something's invalid, this happened when we were doing this demo, as we were building an app out, this Octopets app. And then we put in the GitHub org. But my auth token for VS Code was not authed for GitHub. So it said, hey, you don't have auth. So I had to unroll my ticket, do a new thing, right? And that's kind of in the world that we're going to get to. But I feel like right now we're still in those early stages that we will get to that auth part. And you and Anthropic and others worked on the authentication spec together. Will sort of be implemented out. Because what you really want is, I don't want to install the GitHub MCP or Den's MCP and have to pass the tokens. It should just say, pop up a window, let's log in. Okay, let me find granular control, like what access I'm giving you, just my name or just my whatever.
Yeah, and I think that streamlining of the sign in and then passing the right context to MCP server is going to be super, super important. Like we have folks on the MCP steering committee like Aaron Parecki, who's part of Okta, and we've been collaborating on a lot of the identity and kind of the authorization pieces. He's working a proposal exactly for that. It's just like that single sign-on, like if I'm signed into Cloud Desktop, or VS Code, like what's the right way, what's the right abstraction for me to go in to other downstream MCP servers and say, exchange this for a token that you understand. Use this for the context. And especially because on Windows, we have this awesome thing called the authentication broker, right? That like once you log in with your Entra credentials, your MSA, it's there. Like it handles it for you. Why do I need to go and log in with every single MCP server separately? Like that's just hassle. And we know people do not like prompts. I don't like prompts. I don't know about y'all, but like I do not like when it constantly keeps prompting me. He's like, would you like to log in? Like, just log in.
Log in.
And if there's other permissions that are required, let me know. But other than that, just log in.
Yeah.
So I guess I just want some final thoughts because I find the whole thing like I don't know if I've been this excited. I don't know about you guys, but like I'm
Yeah,
blown away by the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm jazzed.
Like you were saying, like once I watched your video.
Cool, nice, thank you. Like, subscribe.
Yeah,
ring that
which
notification bell.
I'll link to. And that's actually kind of the first implementation, your demo of it. I was like, that's what was immediately like, oh wow, like, and then you start thinking about what all the scenarios are. I'm thinking about my own context, the own apps I build, like holy gee, like there's a lot here. So like, where do you feel like this is going? Like,
well, to me, like,
there's obviously things that got to get sorted out.
yeah. Well,
right, because we're
as
really
always.
yeah.
Well, it's to me, what's really exciting about it is that, and where it's going is unlocking all this potential of what all these clients and all these LLMs have the possibility to do. And to me, the most exciting part is to take actions on my behalf,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Right. Just like Copilot is taking actions in code. To me, it's like, we restified, by writing REST APIs to like everything on the internet, right? And it's what an exciting time as a developer that you can only, as a company, bootstrap and like expose all this rich functionality you've created in this amazing REST API. And we created different standards and different authentication stuff and like all this. It was really exciting. It got more complex, right? I love when things are simple. Yeah. Like I started mobile development like when I was iPhone 4, right? And we saw physical keyboards on devices, and it was amazing because I had like one screen size. I was like, yeah, I could do this, and I started my mobile development career there. And we're at that exciting time where like it is gonna. It's almost like you're at the forefront, right? You're on the foundation of it. And when we're in the foundation of AI and LLMs and machine learning, I was like, this is way too complex. I don't understand what's happening. They're like, tokens, math. I'm like, I love math, but I could grasp, I can understand this. To me, it's like, how do we not just restify into MCP servers, like all these different tools and capabilities, but how do we make those servers also do rich functionality that I don't have to do on my server, or I can like combine with LLMs, I can do other things like that, and make it so the scenarios are based, right? Hey, this is a developer MCP. This is a data engineer MCP. This is like this, or like we said, we slice and dice. Like I am Courier X, where like, oh, I have a bunch of MCP servers. Mm-hmm. One's for the driver, one's for the consumer, one's for this. I'm making these really amazing features and functionalities that allows them to stay inside the tool and stay inside my ecosystem, and make it look like I am on the forefront, like I am an innovator in my space. I can be Courier X. I've been delivering packages for the last 80 years, but my company is a technology first company, right? When I have Courier W, go, like you said, go to my door, I'm like, whoa, it's like magic. Like, whoa. We sent a courier service. We're going to be generic, so here. We're going to non-sponsored, no sponsored content here. But we sent someone that was dashing, picked up some flowers, and we sent it to a happy like bouquet and all this stuff to a family member, and we got a photo. Like I got it on my app, right? And then we sent them the photo. They're like, how they're in their 70s. It's like they're in their 70s, my parents, and like, how did you get a photo of like, who was that? Yeah. I was like, oh, it's like someone took a photo. It's like real time, right? You're watching them on a map doing that. So that's what excites me about it. It's like, how do I bring that? But how do I bring it into tools that I'm using every day, right? I don't want to install 1,000 different apps to do 1,000 different things. Like I want that. Like I'm going to a conference in Spain, and I'm like, I have an Alaska flight, then I have an American flight, then I have a Iberia flight, and right now I just installed 18 different apps on my phone to figure out how do I pick a seat. Like, why do I got to do that? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, let me just figure out the stuff, and like, let me use a tool that I'm configured. So that's the future I want with like, and I love apps. I'm an app developer, but let my app do the things that's really great at for my experience. But let's work where I'm already One World. Like, let's just figure this out. Sponsored by One World. Big Alaska Air fan over here. MVP Gold. And so,
Zojirushi.
Anyways, that's how I say it. Zojirushi, sponsored by the #1 rice cooker in the world. In there, but that's how I see it, and I think it will also hopefully unlock other ideas for companies to do stuff, right? That maybe never thought about exposing their API to the world, because of different things. So like we are huge sauna people. Me and my wife, we love sauna, and we have a sauna at home, and it has a Sauna Logic board sponsored by Sauna Logic. And I have to go to the app and I do a schedule, things like that. But it would be really nice, again, this world where like my environment, whether it's Windows or whatever, could understand, imagine GitHub Copilot's like, oh, I see that you're I'm going to be done cooking here on this code in the next 30 minutes. Like, do you want me to start your sauna for you? It's, oh, yeah, just do that. I can see that. Like, and that company may have never thought about, like, oh, never to expose my API to anyone else. But now it's like, oh, actually, I can develop one sort of standard that anyone can connect to out there in the world. So anyways, I'm just excited about these other scenarios where any tool that I'm using would have to go do all these custom implementations, and said sauna company I might have to go then build something for it, right? But said sauna company could go develop an MCP server, and then it could be used by other tools. So that's why I'm excited about this future of where it's going. But as a developer, I'm excited because it unlocks like a whole new ecosystem for me to tap into, right? And so it's just like the first time I saw mobile app development. I was like, oh, this is it. Supercomputer in my pocket, boom. First time I saw REST APIs, oh my God, amazing, right? And MCP server is sort of that first unlock for me there too.
Yeah.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think, look, to me, the biggest thing that MCP enables here is makes LLMs and models useful for everyone. Literally for everyone.
Everybody.
And when I say that, it's because, think about it this way. Like, if I'm, like, what is the biggest blocker today when it comes to making an LLM useful for your scenario? Because people perceive it as like, oh, it's a large language model. Like, I can give it some, like, parlor tricks, right? Like, oh, I'm going to ask it, like, give me a joke, write me a poem, right? But a lot of the value is locked behind the fact that you have organizations that have data that's locked in those silos. For me to use ChatGPT in my corporate environment, I can't do that. It doesn't have access to my SharePoint. It doesn't have access to my OneDrive or anything like that. I can't ask it to, can you find me my last year's performance review document so I can get the structure and write a new one?
Nor do you maybe want it to
Nor do I want
access.
it to, right. But at the same time, like, a lot of this data access is crucial. Like, like what you just mentioned about your scenarios about like travel, it's like, for me to make sure that the LLM is useful, I needed to have access to that data.
Yeah.
And I can't expect OpenAI or Anthropic to go and train their models on a bunch. Like, how are they going to do that? They can't.
And real-time data. Real-time,
exactly.
That's the thing, too, is like we've recorded this podcast for the last like 30 minutes. How many air tickets just got circulated, right? But guess what? If these tools could tap into it all in real time, right?
Exactly.
The models are never going to know about my confirmation code or know how to look that up or figure it out. They only know past data that's publicly available, right? It can tap into that.
It's exactly that. And then you plug in an MCP server for Figma. You plug in an MCP server for Blender. You might have in the future an MCP server for your medical professionals that will say, like, go and create this record. Go and pull me the x-rays from 3 years ago or something. I don't need to know what system it's using or right. Like, and of course, like we're overly trivializing it right now. Like, it's like, so anybody listening to this is like, oh my God, medical records. Like we know that there needs to be safeguards and a lot of these protections, but the idea of just making data accessible and make this superpower available to everyone, no matter your field, no matter what scenario you're doing, like just plug in an MCP server and there you go.
Yeah, the way I think of it is just we're going from like this, feels like as developers very static. It's kind of what I was alluding for, is like everything's very static, to now it's almost as how we're doing the LLM and how it's calling tools it's wide open.
Yeah.
Like there's no, this is the formula, this is static how it has to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's any really thing that you want. And then with the results, whatever you want to do. Like, think about how much people are doing reporting on, oh, I got this reporter. It's like, here's data. Do with it what you will.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the amazing thing would be exactly the same thing is like I go to my car mechanic and like imagine if I could access that data in my tools and I could ask about my Subaru, sponsored by Subaru, my Forester, like information. But wouldn't it be amazing if I could combine different data sources with what's actually happening in my vehicle in real time, pull that down and do it and do that stuff, right? Do all these things in real time. I think that is the real power at the end of the day, is unlocking that.
The controls that we talked about earlier about like tool authorization. Imagine if you're like car mechanic has an MCP server and say, if James logs in, he only has access to your current car state, this is this. If your mechanic logs in, you have access to a whole bunch of different, right? Like this flexibility and just the capabilities that come with it is just, it's so powerful.
And it's about the ability of like, we as developers, we can build amazing applications that summarize and show reports and do stuff. But wouldn't it be amazing if you were to expose that data in a way and make, when I say expose, I mean you make the data available. You make the data available. Now, I think Fowler told me to say that. make this data available to the model, and then let your mechanic figure out how they want to visualize it. Like, it'd be great. We could build a chart and a graph, but like also a model could, right?
Yeah.
You could say, hey, go get James's Subaru Forester data, and can you map out how long in between the miles, between oil changes, and then also tell me how much oil I had to add, because that was entered into some data. Visualize that in a chart, and then give me a recommendation for him of what he's going to need to do and what I need to do now, and then also send him an email and then go figure it out. Like, you could just talk to it, and then it'll just do it for you. And in a world, that mechanic would never be able to get that. They'd have to buy and license that software to go, and then developers have to go create all this custom software for that shop. I used to work
exactly that.
I used to work my second job out of college. So first I worked at Canon writing printer software. Then I worked at a company where we did hotel software for DVR systems and the system. When you go into your hotel, it's like, hey, James, how's it going? We used to make that, right? And then I built mobile apps that would connect to it. Every single hotel wanted something custom, right? And when you get down that route of everyone wants something unique, it becomes unmaintainable, right? You're doing custom tailored stuff. That is a business, and it's a great business. But wouldn't it be amazing if we standardized how you get grid data out, so everybody has access to the grid data? Then you can build custom solutions on top of that.
You know what that also does? It actually, and this I think it's going to be so exciting, is right now we're thinking of like the interaction interface for you with your travel agent, with a travel apps, or your car mechanic, with your doctor. You have different apps, websites. What if in the future all that just goes away? You have one shared interface, which could be your LLM, could be voice interface, could be anything. How do you connect all these services, right? And at that point, the need for a lot of these super custom applications just disappears, because it's all we were talking about MCP here in the context of MCP, but that's what MCP enables. It's like I have one interface, which can be my LLM through some app, whether it's in my operating system somehow, it doesn't really matter. And then you can plug in anything. Yeah. You don't need to write custom software to go for James to go and query, like, what's my car status? Let me log into this website. Just ask.
And think about like all the custom hardware and the different things. You saw the early AI wearable devices and travel devices with you, and obviously supercomputers in our pocket. But it could even revolutionize how we think about creating hardware and how we integrate some of these things into it, because those early hardware specifications needed to do all that hard work. They needed to figure out, okay, is it the model? Am I calling this? Am I calling that? Right? It'll just figure out for you, right? And that's the future.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. I really appreciate you guys doing this. I could tell we're all like super geeked about what the future is.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome. Again, really, thanks for the insight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
Thank you for having us.
Cheers.
Thanks again to James and Den for taking the time. I really do appreciate the conversation. Thanks to Richard Campbell for inviting me and setting up these interviews, as well as Microsoft for hosting me at Microsoft Build. Thanks.